I've never been one to believe in ghost stories. Neither has Tom. He's been my best friend since we were kids, and we've always found it funny how easily other people get scared. So when we heard about the cave known as the Abyss of No Return and its cursed reputation, Tom looked at me with that mischievous smile. "Think we can break the curse, Lucas?" he asked with a smirk. The cave had a dark history. People said many had entered and never come back. "The cave devours," some locals whispered. But we refused to be swayed by rumors and superstitions. Deep down, we figured it was just another urban legend meant to scare away tourists. So that weekend, we geared up and headed straight for the entrance to the abyss. As we got closer, I could feel people watching us. They looked at us like we were heading to our deaths, but that didn't shake us. Tom and I just laughed it off. Standing right at the cave's mouth, he took out his phone, switched on the flashlight, and gave me that usual cocky grin. "Let's see who makes it back and who becomes a legend, right, Lucas?" At that moment, all we felt was adrenaline, confident that we'd walk out the same way we walked in. The moment we stepped inside, something felt off. I expected to hear the sound of dripping water or maybe our footsteps echoing against the cave walls. But there was nothing. Just this thick, heavy silence that seemed to swallow every noise we made. It was as if the cave itself wanted to keep us quiet, like it was warning us somehow. I glanced over at Tom, and for a second, I thought he might feel it too. But he just shrugged and kept walking, making some joke about how it was classic horror movie vibes. I laughed, but it was a nervous kind of laugh, trying to shake off that strange, uneasy feeling that was starting to creep into my gut. As we moved deeper, the discomfort grew. The cave walls seemed to close in around us, getting narrower, pressing in. I swear, at one point, I thought I saw shadows shifting along the rocks, almost like they were watching us. I shook my head, brushing it off as just my imagination. This was just nerves, the kind of thing that happens when you're in a dark, cramped space. "This place is nothing special," Tom said, laughing like he wanted to prove he wasn't scared. "Pretty soon we'll be heading back, and everyone will know this cave is just another lame legend." I laughed with him, but deep down, something told me we should have turned back. We had been wandering for hours. Every twist and turn we took only seemed to lead us back to the same spot. At first, we laughed it off, joking about how we'd managed to get ourselves lost in a haunted cave. But with every path leading us in circles, the laughter started to fade. "Are we looping around?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my nerves were starting to fray. Tom looked around, his confidence finally slipping. "Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. We've been marking the walls." He pointed to one of the scratches we'd left as a trail. "And yet somehow, we kept ending up back here." That's when the feeling hit me. It was subtle at first, like an itch I couldn't quite scratch. But it grew until it felt like eyes were following our every move, closing in with every step we took. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, lurking in the shadows, but all I saw was darkness stretching into the void. "Lucas," Tom's voice shook, almost in a whisper. "I think we're not alone down here." The words sent a chill up my spine. It was the first time I'd ever heard fear in his voice. The reality was sinking in. We were trapped, and something was watching us. The silence pressed down on us, heavy and suffocating, as a creeping sense of panic clawed its way up inside me. I wanted to run, but where would we go? It started with footsteps, soft, echoing in the distance, like someone was following us. I stopped, straining my ears, and held my breath, but the moment I did, the footsteps stopped too. I shot a look at Tom, who was already turning around, his flashlight swinging through the darkness. There was no one there. Just the shadows cast along the cave walls, stretching and shifting. As we kept moving, I noticed those shadows weren't staying still. They seemed to move, crawling along the walls, following us, surrounding us. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was a trick of the light or maybe just my mind playing games. But every time I looked again, they were still there, waiting, watching. Then, out of nowhere, Tom froze. His eyes widened, and he looked over his shoulder, his face drained of color. Did you just whisper my name?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper itself. I shook my head, feeling a cold chill settle in my chest. "Tom, I didn't say anything." His face paled even more, and I could see he was rattled. "Someone whispered." "Tom," he muttered, almost to himself. The air felt thicker, the silence broken only by faint, distant murmurs echoing off the cave walls. It was like the cave itself was breathing, pulsing with a dark energy that seemed to close in on us with every step. We weren't alone. This place was alive, feeding off our fear, waiting for us to break. It was toying with us. And deep down, I felt it. Whatever was here, it didn't want us to leave. I don't know how it happened, but somehow, I found a way out. 1 second, I was stumbling through the dark, and the next, there was a faint glimmer of daylight spilling through a narrow gap in the rocks. I called out for Tom, but there was no answer. The silence was as heavy as ever, pressing down on me. A part of me wanted to go back, to keep searching for him, but something in that silence warned me not to. My hands shook as I squeezed through the gap, finally stepping out into the open air. I took in a deep breath, feeling the sun on my face, but it didn't bring any comfort. Something felt wrong. I looked back at the entrance, half expecting Tom to appear, but he never did. And that's when I felt it, a weight, a presence, still clinging to me, like icy fingers trailing over my shoulders. I shivered, brushing at my neck, but there was nothing there. Days passed, but that feeling never left. I'd catch glimpses of shadows flickering just out of sight, hear faint whispers echoing my name when I was alone. Friends told me I looked pale, distracted, like I wasn't really here anymore. And they were right. Something had followed me out of that cave. It was with me every second, lurking just at the edge of my vision, clinging to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I escaped the cave, but whatever was inside, it never let me go. My life became a waking nightmare, haunted by something only I could feel. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when my best friend Jake and I decided to venture out into the woods behind his house. The leaves crunched beneath our boots, creating a satisfying rhythm as we wandered further away from the familiar trails. Jake had always been the adventurous type, quick to dismiss caution and embrace whatever thrills lay ahead. I, on the other hand, was more of a thinker. I liked to weigh the risks, to consider every angle before diving headfirst into the unknown. But that day, something about Jake's infectious excitement pushed me forward. We followed a narrow, winding path that twisted deeper into the forest, the towering trees filtering the golden sunlight into a soft glow. As we walked, I felt a mix of exhilaration and unease. The deeper we went, the more the vibrant sounds of the forest faded, replaced by an eerie silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I shrugged it off. After all, it was just the two of us, surrounded by nature. Then, just as I was about to suggest we turn back, we stumbled upon it. The entrance of a cave loomed before us, partly concealed by thick vines and underbrush. It was dark and foreboding, an inviting mystery hidden in plain sight. I exchanged a glance with Jake, his eyes sparkling with curiosity and mischief. "Come on, it'll be fun," he urged, already stepping closer to the mouth of the cave. I hesitated for a moment, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The air felt different here, thicker, charged with an energy that set me on edge. But Jake's enthusiasm was hard to resist. My sense of caution wavered under the weight of his excitement. "Okay, but let's just take a quick look," I said, attempting to mask my unease. As we stepped inside, the world outside faded into silence. The cave swallowed us whole, the light dwindling until all we could see were the faint outlines of the walls. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth from the ceiling, and the damp, cool air wrapped around us. Each step echoed, amplifying the sound of our breathing and the distant drip of water somewhere in the dark. Despite the chill creeping into my bones, curiosity urged me on. I followed Jake deeper into the cavern, trying to shake off the sensation that we had crossed some invisible threshold into a place where we didn't belong. What lay ahead was unknown, and my heart raced with both thrill and dread. We were explorers now, but something in the back of my mind whispered that we were also intruders in a place best left undisturbed. As we ventured deeper into the cave, the light from the entrance vanished completely, swallowed by an oppressive darkness. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in the stillness. The air grew colder, and a damp chill wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. I could hear the faint sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, a rhythmic plink that added to the sense of isolation. The walls of the cave were slick with moisture, and as we moved further in, I marveled at the sight of the stalactites hanging above us, their sharp, pointed forms resembling the teeth of some ancient beast. The ceiling felt like it was closing in, making me acutely aware of how far we had strayed from the world outside. I strained my eyes to see, but the darkness seemed to swallow any trace of light. Just as I was about to suggest we turn back, Jake's voice pierced the silence. "Hey, check this out," he called, his tone a mix of excitement and awe. I followed him to a large chamber, where the walls were covered in strange symbols, carved deep into the rock. They looked like a combination of runes and primitive drawings, figures that seemed to twist and writhe as I stared at them. A sense of unease washed over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not meant to see this. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, made from rough stones stacked haphazardly. Scattered around it were remnants of something that sent chills down my spine. Small bones, some bleached white, others darkened by age or something more sinister. I felt a wave of nausea as I tried to comprehend what we were looking at. It was an altar for rituals, but rituals of what? A part of me screamed that we should leave, but Jake was entranced, his eyes wide with wonder. "Look at this," he exclaimed, kneeling beside a particularly large bone, half buried in the dirt. "This is incredible. Who do you think used this place?" His enthusiasm felt out of place in such a disturbing setting, and I could feel my anxiety bubbling over. "Jake, this is not right. We should get out of here," I insisted, my voice barely above a whisper. But he waved me off, already wandering deeper into the chamber, tracing his fingers along the carvings on the wall. I could see that he was fascinated, but I was increasingly unsettled. The air felt heavier, charged with a foreboding energy that made my skin crawl. "Come on just a little further," he urged, his back to me as he focused on a particularly intricate symbol. I hesitated, torn between the urge to pull him back and the fear of being left alone in this nightmare of a cave. "You're not scared, are you?" he teased, glancing back with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course not," I lied, forcing a smile despite the dread pooling in my stomach. But with each passing moment, the sense of wrongness only grew, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened here was far from over. As Jake continued to explore the strange symbols on the wall, I tried to push back the growing sense of dread that clawed at my insides. Just as I was about to suggest we leave, a low rumble reverberated through the cave, sending a shiver down my spine. It felt like the very earth beneath us was shifting, a warning that we were intruding into a place that should remain untouched. "Did you feel that?" I asked, my voice shaky as I scanned the shadows around us. Jake, still oblivious to the danger, shrugged. "It's probably just the wind outside. Let's keep going." He was so caught up in the thrill of discovery that he didn't seem to notice how the air had changed, becoming heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, a faint sound reached my ears, a soft whisper, almost like a voice carried on the wind. I strained to listen, but the words were indecipherable, swirling in the darkness around us. My heart raced as I turned to Jake, who had finally paused his exploration, looking around with a frown. "What was that?" he asked, his bravado faltering for the first time. "I don't know, but we should." Before I could finish, the whispering grew louder, echoing off the walls in a chorus of unintelligible murmurs. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of our flashlights, twisting and shifting as if something was moving just out of sight. My skin prickled with fear, and every instinct screamed at me to run. "Jake, we need to go. Now," I urged, my voice firm this time. But he remained still, entranced by the dark corners of the cavern. "It's just our imaginations, right? There's nothing here," he said, but I could see the uncertainty creeping into his expression. Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled again, more violently this time. A low growl resonated from the depths of the cave, echoing off the walls and filling the space with a palpable sense of menace. My breath caught in my throat as I gripped Jake's arm, panic rising. "This isn't right, Jake. We're not alone." He finally turned to me, the thrill of adventure replaced by a dawning realization. The oppressive atmosphere clung to us like a shroud, thickening the air and dulling our senses. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of voices, each one beckoning, pleading, or warning. I couldn't tell which was which, but the fear in my gut was undeniable. As we stood there, the shadows began to converge, drawing closer. I could almost make out shapes moving within them, dark figures that seemed to ripple and pulse with a life of their own. I felt a cold wave wash over me, a sensation of being watched, hunted even. Jake finally seemed to sense the danger, his expression shifting from confusion to fear. We should really go," he stammered, his bravado gone. I nodded fervently, taking a step back toward the cave entrance, but the shadows flickered, cutting off our escape like a dark curtain falling around us. The whispers grew louder, filling my head with a maddening chorus, and for the first time, I understood that whatever lay in the darkness was not just an echo of our imaginations. It was something real, something evil, waiting for us to make our next move. Panic surged through me as the shadows seemed to pulse and close in around us. "Run!" I shouted, my voice breaking the eerie spell that had wrapped itself around us. I grabbed Jake's arm, and we stumbled backward, the darkness swallowing the light from our flashlights. The whispering voices grew louder, an unsettling symphony of sound that surrounded us, urging us to turn and flee. As we sprinted deeper into the cave, I could hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing behind us, heavy and deliberate. It was a sound that made my skin crawl, each footfall like a drumbeat signaling our imminent doom. The cave walls shifted around us, the passages twisting and turning like a living thing, disorienting us as we desperately searched for an exit. I had no idea which way we were going, and each corner we rounded revealed only more darkness, more impenetrable shadows. "Where do we go?" Jake gasped, panic lacing his voice. I could see the fear etched on his face, mirroring the turmoil within me. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him we would find a way out, but even I didn't know if that was possible anymore. Suddenly, Jake stumbled over something on the ground, a jagged rock that had escaped the shadows. He fell hard, his shout of pain piercing through the cacophony of whispers and footfalls. "Shit! My ankle," he cried, trying to push himself up, but the pain was too much. I rushed to his side, my heart racing as I looked around, terrified of what was closing in on us. "Can you walk?" I asked, desperate. He winced, shaking his head. "No, I think I twisted it. We have to get out of here." The words sent a jolt of dread through me. We were trapped, and I couldn't bear the thought of leaving him behind. I pulled him up, draping his arm over my shoulder to help him limp away, but the moment we moved, I heard it again, the sound of footsteps, closer this time. "Hurry," I urged, dragging him along as best I could. The cave seemed to shift around us, the walls closing in, and the passageways twisting in ways that defied logic. It was as if the cave itself was alive, conspiring to keep us from escaping. "Where is the exit?" Jake gasped, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't know. I could feel my own fear rising, choking me as we stumbled into another dead end. The walls loomed high, impossibly steep, and the shadows danced around us, mocking our plight. "We just need to go back the way we came," I said, trying to maintain some semblance of calm. But every path we took led to more confusion, more darkness. It was as if we were trapped in a nightmare, and the oppressive weight of despair began to settle over us like a thick fog. Jake's face twisted in pain and fear as we turned back again, and for a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows behind us, a flicker, a presence that sent a shudder of terror through my body. "It's coming for us," I shouted, the raw panic spilling from my lips. We had to keep moving, but each step felt heavier, the darkness more consuming. The whispers became a chant, an eerie chorus that echoed my fears. "This way," I cried, and we dashed into another passage, but I knew in my heart that time was running out. Desperation clawed at me as we raced against the unseen horror lurking just beyond our reach, the oppressive darkness swallowing our hope, and all I could think was that we might never find our way out. As we stumbled through the dark, desperation clawed at my throat. Jake leaned heavily against me, his breath ragged and panicked. The shadows seemed to shift and swirl around us, tightening like a noose as we moved deeper into the cave. I could feel the weight of something ominous lurking just beyond our vision, an oppressive force that made the air electric with fear. Then, as we turned yet another corner, we came to a small clearing illuminated by an eerie glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The air was thick with a palpable dread, and as we stepped into the light, I froze. Before us, a dark figure stood, its form indistinct yet undeniably menacing. It loomed in the shadows, twisting and shifting like smoke, and I felt an overwhelming sense of wrongness wash over me. It was as if the very essence of evil had taken shape right in front of us. "Jake," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. But he was frozen beside me, his eyes wide with terror as the figure seemed to take notice of our presence. The whispers escalated into a deafening roar, filling my head with a cacophony of voices that screamed and beckoned all at once. In that moment, everything narrowed down to a singular gut-wrenching choice: fight or flee. But could we even escape? The entity pulsed with an energy that made my skin crawl, and I knew we were facing something ancient and powerful. My heart raced as I looked at Jake, the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. Maybe we can reason with it," Jake stammered, his voice shaky. But deep down, I knew that there was no negotiating with whatever this was. We were nothing but intruders in its domain, and our lives were hanging by a thread. "Jake, we can't stay here. We have to find a way out," I urged, desperation fueling my words. But as I looked back at the figure, I realized it was moving closer, inching towards us with a purpose that made my blood run cold. The shadows writhed around it, and the air grew thick, suffocating in its intensity. Maybe one of us should distract it, Jake suggested, his voice barely a whisper. I turned to him, my heart sinking at the implication. What are you saying? I could hardly form the words as a wave of disbelief washed over me. The thought of sacrificing one of us to save the other felt like a betrayal I could never make. If one of us can get away, maybe the other can find help, he insisted, desperation lacing his tone. But I couldn't let him do that. No, we're not leaving each other behind, I replied fiercely, though doubt gnawed at my resolve. The entity drew closer, and I could feel its malevolence wrapping around us like a vice. We were running out of time. I could see the fear in Jake's eyes shifting into something resolute. I can buy you time. Just go, he shouted, pushing me away even as I protested. No, I won't leave you. But the shadows were closing in, and I could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing against us, forcing me to choose between the friendship we had built and the fight for our lives. In that moment, a surge of adrenaline propelled me forward, and I took a step back toward the entity, unwilling to let fear dictate my actions. Jake, we can face this together, I shouted, my voice cracking under the strain. But as I turned to grab his arm, I realized he was gone, vanished into the swirling shadows, swallowed by the malevolence that had haunted us since we entered this nightmare. Jake! I screamed, my voice echoing in the cavern, but there was no answer. The darkness thickened around me, a suffocating blanket that cut me off from the world outside. The whispers became a single haunting voice that echoed in my mind, pulling me closer to the entity, urging me to surrender to the terror. The last thing I saw was the figure lunging forward, the darkness enveloping me, and I was left with one final thought. The weight of despair that clung to my heart was nothing compared to the loss of my friend. The cave closed in, and the shadows claimed me, leaving only silence in the wake of our struggle, a silence that would linger long after the echoes of our fear had faded.